10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All systems go.
You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm thankful that you're here with us on this July the 22nd, Tuesday, 2025. We have a great show planned for you today. We will not disappoint. It's basically a follow-up to our discussion we had on Friday with Devon Harper and Amanda Lalonde talking about Garnet Harper and the cause that he was so passionate about and what happened for the last 5 years or so with all the stuff we went through. I don't need to remind you of what we went through for the last 4 years or whatever, but today we're going to be talking about the media and the media's responsibility or lack thereof in what happened over the last 4 years. We're live on CKLU 96.7 FM and we're streaming at cklu.ca. We're also streaming live at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow the channel, and the page will be found on demand on those two platforms immediately following the show, along with x.com/Sudbury News and on our website, sudbury.news. That's where we aggregate all the local news into one convenient website. So again, this morning we're going to have a special edition of Sudbury News Talk, and so I invite all of you to, share, like, comment on the show. We may not be able to get your comments read, but we'll get them up on the screen for those watching, and for those listening, and you want to see the comments after the show, you can visit the show on demand on the platforms that I just mentioned. But other than that, let's just dive right in with a little bit of weather, because we got a lot to talk about today. And again, we're going to be talking about the media's responsibility and what just happened over the last 4 years. Journalists have been fired over it, and now we're going to be, thanks to Marvin in Alberta, who sent a video of someone he thought should come on this show and wants me to reach out to, Anita Krishna, and her experience as the producer for Global National and what she went through. She's going to be talking a little bit about her experience and what Global News did over the last 4 years that she feels is very, very unprecedented in terms of not just what happened with her, but in the media in general. And does our media actually what do they do these days? Are they actually doing journalism? And then we'll hopefully have enough time to talk about the CBC journalist as well, who kind of stood up and then lost his job just to do real journalism. So there's the two examples on today's show, CBC and Global. And this is, going on throughout our media landscape and the mainstream media. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great show, I promise, or your money back. Okay, current conditions. It is 10 degrees out there. It's partly cloudy. Today we can expect it to be sunny, but becoming a mix of sun and cloud near noon. And then fog patches dissipating in the morning. High of 24. Humidex, though, will feel like 27 tonight. Clear, increasing cloudiness after midnight. And then tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud. 40% chance of showers in the afternoon. Wind will be moderate, but gusting up to 50 kilometers per hour. High of 27 with the UV index will be 8 or very high, but with the humidex, it'll feel like 38 degrees. And that's for your tomorrow with a 40% chance of showers. Thursday, 40% chance of showers, high of 26. Same thing for Friday. And then 27 and a mix of sun and cloud on Saturday. 28 with a 30% chance of showers on Sunday, 26 with a 60% chance of showers on Monday. That's your Sudbury weather, brought to you by sudburyweather.ca. We'll be back with news headlines very quickly. Your comments up on the screen, but mainly we're going to be doing a special show today into situations with mainstream media in Canada and what's been going on. And I've been banging that drum for so long, and then people are like, yeah, well, show us the evidence. And we do from time to time, but today you need evidence. Well, we'll have it for you. We'll be back right after this. Okay, and welcome back. We were looking at a few things here for Sudbury News headlines coming from the Sudbury Star today. They have basically a newsletter that they send to everybody at about 7 in the morning. And a couple sad stories I just wanted to get to here. There was a body found in the Spanish River that police have not yet identified the deceased, although I do have inside sources that, alluded me to who it could be, but I'm not going to publicize anything until the proper authorities do it. And then Sudbury Star also has a story on a driver that blacked out before they struck and killed a pedestrian. And Chad Ringette, who pleaded guilty to speeding and also struck and injured a second pedestrian, along with killing one of them. So there's more on that. Unfortunately, I don't make up the news. It just happens each and every day. And then there was a drowning on Moonlight Beach. A man drowns in Sudbury after inflatable kayak capsizes. Despite the best efforts of the rescue personnel, a young man has drowned in Moonlight Beach after inflatable kayak was capsized. Greater Sudbury police said in a release that officers were called to the beach on Ramsey Lake at about 5:30 p.m. on July the 19th. And when they got there, Greater Sudbury Fire Services were already on scene, and the fire services water rescue staff had pulled two people from the water. One man, 27, was alert and conscious upon reaching the shore. However, the second individual, 24-year-old man, was pronounced was unconscious and had no vital signs. So Greater Sudbury paramedic services began life-saving measures on the younger man once he reached the shore. Unfortunately, he was pronounced deceased on the scene. Now, I do know who that individual is as well, because my affiliations at work. So the name has not been publicly released, and so we will not release that name on the show either. However, for more information, just continue to monitor our local news sources and news agencies, and you will be able to get more on that. Now, more on what we were talking about today. I don't want to take up too much time. I got off to a bit of a late start. Again, as usual, my fault this morning. However, Anita Krishna, former producer for the Global National, has her own podcast right now, and I want to just kind of turn the time over to her. Thanks to Marvin, by the way, for sharing this with us this morning. And also Monique Dupuis, I believe, had a video with Northern Perspectives covering the situation with the CBC journalist who was, well, he resigned, but basically he resigned because he was fired. This is going on all the time in Canada now, all over the world actually, where news agencies are they're not practicing real journalism anymore. And we saw that right at the beginning, right, of what was going on in the last 5 years. But now the world is kind of catching on. But the mainstream media is just bearing down and digging in their heels. Well, take it away, Anita, and we'll be back right after this. I promise she'll have a lot of really great information for all y'all.
Like my friend Anita Krishna in Canada, she worked for a global news or a big news network. She started to ask just regular questions. She's like, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? We're a news organization. Isn't that what we do as a news organization? And she got fired for that, of course.
Crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Today I have totally mixed feelings about the latest in that now Global National, which is a show I used to direct. it has now come out with this 3-part series about injuries. And now they are actually saying the things that I used to say in 2021. These things that they're all going to tell you are all things that I said in 2021. And that just got me fired. I wouldn't even say it in a mean way. I would just say, hey, have you looked at this? Hey, have you heard about this person? Have you heard that, paralysis, Guillain-Barré syndrome? Hey, we're not really reporting these things, and for that, I got fired. And now today, lo and behold, 4 years later, now they're doing this series. And the way, I guess it's a good thing in a way because, they're actually saying the words out loud that they never said before. But I'm actually highly annoyed by this also. Like, I feel I don't know, I'm brimming with kind of emotion about this. But let's just go ahead and watch some of this and what they had to say recently.
On this Wednesday night, Canadians injured by vaccines. Why some of them say the government broke its promise to help them.
I do not want to be the poster child for the anti-vax movement.
A Global News investigation.
That clip is very telling. I do not want to be the poster child for the anti-vax movement. God forbid you actually might portray yourself in that way. So we're going to make sure we put that clip in the headline so people, this is how we feel about it.
Into a $50 million federal program. It's not easy being...
Okay, then they're going to talk about some other stuff. But let's move ahead to the lead story. So when I worked there, my job was going, camera 2 on a plasma shot. And I would just put in this generic global national and then flash to the next thing that we were showing. Let's say the lead story was about a fire. I'd put fire viz in there. And then you roll the story and then go to what's next. Is it double boxes? Is it a reporter? Is it this, that? So I had a technical job directing and switching the show. And I worked with Donna Friesen, I don't know, hundreds of times. But here we go.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with troubling revelations about a government program meant to protect the unfortunate few legitimately injured by vaccines. The Vaccine Injury Support Program was created during the pandemic to compensate people who suffered serious and permanent side effects. But a Global News investigation revealed...
don't gloss over that. She said, unfortunate few.
4 years later, only a fraction of the millions in taxpayer dollars funding that program is reaching those in need. Here's Carolyn Jarvis with part 1 of a 3-part series.
I have not gone public ever, and not very many people even know the cause of Stephen's death because I do not want to be the poster child for the anti-vax movement.
Stephen McDougall was 45. A father of 2 with an entire life ahead when he died.
Myopericarditis post-COVID vaccine.
His widow, Kimberly, was told...
Just know that we knew about this in 2021 and never reported it.
A new federal program would help people financially if they were seriously and permanently injured.
You think that we didn't know about myocarditis and pericarditis back then, that it wasn't fluttering all over the place, but Global News chose not to report on it?
The Vaccine Injury Support Program, or VISP.
It's like a lottery, right? You never think it's going to be you.
The government hired an accounting and consulting firm, Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton, now called Oxaro, and paid them tens of millions of dollars to run VISP. But Global News spoke with vaccine-injured people and former workers across the country who say that program is chaos. Unskilled staff running a system unequipped to handle thousands of claims, leaving the injured waiting months, sometimes years, for help.
It got to a point where everything was a battle.
Meanwhile, the federal health minister, Marjorie Michel, reached out to us saying the allegations we've uncovered are completely unacceptable, that she's asked the Public Health Agency of Canada to find a solution and that all options are on the table.
Here's Miss Carolyn Jarvis, standing here in her blazer, very, very authoritative. I'm standing here in a blazer and I'm telling you that this is what happened. We reached out to this government agency, but they said, this is unacceptable. This is more just pretending to hold the government to account when really you're not even holding yourselves to account. You were in lockstep with the government when this was going on. Maybe that dad wouldn't be in this position if it hadn't been for your badgering the public in the first place. Where were you in your blazer on studio, on set, you and Donna and everybody. If you want to take this thing, you can take it, but here's sort of the risks and the side effects that we want to tell you that we know about. You did not do that. And had you done that back then, people wouldn't be in this situation. Do you understand that? So this sanctimonious going after the authorities and, oh, your tax money is being wasted by WISP and stuff like that. Our tax money was wasted on the goddamn jabbers, you know?
Donna?
Okay, Carolyn Jarvis in Toronto, thank you.
Okay, Carolyn, thank you. Okay, here's some of the second part. And this girl's story, I mean, this girl has been around for a couple of years, talking about her grievous injuries after taking 3 vaccines. And I'm kind of shocked myself that Global National is actually airing her story. And thank goodness they are. But let's watch.
And thank you for joining us. We begin with our exclusive investigation into the federal government's vaccine injury support program.
Yeah, you need to investigate yourself, too, clearly.
Government documents obtained by Global News reveal it severely underestimated the number of claims it would receive. The program was created during the pandemic to help provide financial relief in those rare cases where people were
Rare. She said rare. Again.
And permanently injured by a vaccine. At the time, it was expected that dozens, possibly hundreds, would apply each year. But as Carolyn Jarvis reports, 4 years later, that number has skyrocketed.
I looked this morning, it still says I'm in the application phase.
Kayla Pollock has been waiting 3 years for her case to be assessed by the Vaccine Injury Support Program.
I haven't gotten even a message back saying we're looking at your file.
She is one of more than 1,700 injured people.
That's absolutely appalling and shocking that she's not even got a message back and she's in this condition. That is beyond cruelty. I don't even have words for how awful that is, how absolutely unjust and beyond disgusting that is.
I haven't gotten even a message back saying we're looking at your file.
She is one of more than 1,700 injured people who are still in the queue.
I don't think they've even read my claim.
Kayla has a condition called transverse myelitis, a spinal cord disorder which has been documented after COVID vaccination.
I can't move my hand.
It was only days after her 3rd shot the symptoms started. The searing pain followed a few weeks later.
From about here down, nothing moves and nothing works.
The Vaccine Injury Support Program, or VISP, is run by a private company called Oxaro. It bid on the lucrative government contract, promising speedy response times.
But I would encourage you to watch that story or to look up anything you can about Kayla. She has a website. I'll put it in the description, and to help her out if you can. But you should help her. But the thing is, the government should be helping her. I mean, she took 3 because you know why? I heard her say, I think in another interview, that, you know, you get the text and she was working with children and she believed all the hype, you know, and so it's the government texting you going, your thing is ready now, go and take your thing. And it kind of like alerts some people, or it puts some people in this mode of, oh, I guess I better do it. It worried a lot of people. And she worked with children, and look at the condition she's in now. Did anybody warn her that there's a possibility of paralysis and then you can't move? I did. I mean, not just me, but like all the doctors and all the people that were speaking up and were censored. This is absolutely disgusting, because at the time, Global News just pushed us down. I mean, Global News threw me out of the building. And I feel like I have to do another video telling all the stories of all the things that they did and said, because I don't think I've ever done that. So that's important. But they made an example of someone like me. Like, if you're going to speak up about this, we're going to throw you out and fire you and make an example of you. And that's what Global News and Burnaby did. So is anybody else going to speak up there? Anybody that might have been feeling the same? No. They all still work there. It's almost like, you want to be like Anita? and alert us to this, well, we'll tell you. We're the boss. We're running the show. We're editorial. And I bet you people like Kayla would have never gotten this had we reported accurately. But we did not do that at the time. All we did was fearmonger people. We did things like this.
Well, if everyone else gets vaccinated, they will be kept safe. You will not be safe.
That pointed warning from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau aimed at people who are hoping to be protected.
Oh, it's my buddy Licature.
Protected by herd immunity instead of a vaccine. Canada's vaccination rate was on a steady climb, but the summer has seen a steep slide in daily doses administered for 100 people. It's why politicians are prodding Canadians to get jabbed.
Different provinces are looking at incentive programs. We're certainly working with the provinces on documentation.
Yes, get a donut and change your life.
To facilitate international travel, as more and more countries, like Canada has just done, is going to open only to fully vaccinated travelers.
Trudeau, oh my God. Oh God.
Warns the Delta variant is still circulating, and the majority of new cases are among the unvaccinated.
Walk-in Wednesday, and on that day we will open all our clinics to just walk-in capacity.
Even that Penny Ballum revealed that this was all about coercion also.
BC is waiving appointments for one day next week as the province ramps up its immunization campaign while case counts rise. But health experts say governments still have some work to do in fighting the misinformation online and convince.
You were the only ones full of misinformation. You were the only ones. And that's why people who are in the position that Kayla's in and then that lady's husband's in and other injured people are in, they wouldn't be in this position had you reported properly in the first place. You are the misinformation.
The roughly 20% of Canadians who are still not vaccinated.
Treat people who have questions in a serious manner. This is not the time for shaming and blaming or finger pointing.
Oh, not the time for shaming. That's all you did.
Nothing but further polarize the situation.
The next step after persuasion could be coercion, following in the footsteps of France.
Oh my God, they're literally telling you coercion, persuasion, get it. And, oh God, this is just so frustrating. They did all this stuff to people and now people are facing the consequences and they're acting now like, oh, we're doing this 3-part series and we're investigating the vaccine injury support program. And believe me, we're on it, taking authorities to task. No, you're not. Where were you? Where were you challenging the prime minister? Where were you challenging Bonnie Henry at the time? You were not doing any of these things. Where were you challenging the federal health officer, that Theresa Tam? You put all this propaganda, I just showed you in that Licature report, coercion and persuasion. And hey, a lot of people aren't, the vaccination's declining and maybe you won't be able to travel and do things and go to restaurants. And you guys all help cause arguments with families and things like that. And that was all happening in 2020, 2021. And by the time I got fired in 2022, I had said everything I needed to say. I told everybody everything. And it wasn't just like me saying it. This information was available. What I'm trying to tell you is they didn't want to report it. And anything that was brought up was like, Anita, shut up. Anita, stop talking. I got emails saying, stop talking about COVID when I brought up Omicron. Omicron was in South Africa on the weekend and all of a sudden it rolled into town on Monday. And I said to the people producing the 6 o'clock news, the producer, her name's Marsha, I said, well, how did it come to town? It was just like in South Africa on the weekend. How is it in British Columbia? And she said, she kind of shrugged her shoulders. And I said, ask Bonnie. Get Keith to ask Bonnie. We're in touch with her. And then she said, somebody on a plane, they say that somebody on a plane might have brought it in. I was like, we don't know. And how bad is it? It was like mild too. And I said, oh, somebody on a plane. So then that would have been a vaccinated person, because the unjabbed are not allowed to fly. And then once I said that, I got an email from my operations manager, Al Wright, who said, Anita, you need to stop talking about COVID right now. I need to stop. You guys are doing this. You're fear-mongering the whole planet. That's why you scared everybody. And now you're trying to act like, oh, you're all sanctimonious. You're all acting like, oh, we're we're telling you now that, hey, some people were injured. You could have told us then. You had the information then, and you refused to tell people, and you demonized all the medications. And I can tell you more about why we did that, because if there's already an existing medication, then you cannot put out an emergency use authorized jab. And that's why they said this doesn't work and this one's horse dewormer. That's all misinformation. And one more thing I want to show you is just like a look at how we treated doctors that spoke out about this. For example, one doctor, Stephen Malthouse. Now, Dr. Stephen Malthouse, we absolutely railed to death on Global News, calling him probably every, we did not cover him accurately and fairly. We did not uphold journalistic principles in the coverage at all, for which I got fired for. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. But actually, we'll show you a video of Global News coming after me saying I didn't uphold journalistic principles. If you haven't seen this already, it was utterly ridiculous, this video. That just shows you I have such contempt for these people at Global News. I mean, if you're stupid, you're stupid, right? And, if you didn't know, you didn't know. But a journalist doesn't have the right to say, I didn't know. The journalist has to look at the other side of the story. A journalist doesn't say, oh, no. Oh, Wuhan, no. Oh, gain of function, no. Like a journalist has to go, okay, what happened here? Because we need to tell the public, because we could be putting their health at risk. And someone like me, a director, bringing that up and then getting shut down and made an example of and treated with so much cruelty. You took my career away. Well, I don't really give a shit because I do other things now, but it's like, it's probably for the best because I can't work with you Satanists anyway. But here, oh God, let's look at this. No charges over alleged vaccination exemption document, City of Toronto says. What a boring headline. That's Sean O'Shea. But this is about Dr. Malthouse, who was writing exemptions for kids playing hockey, because you really need to jibber jabber all these children up for them to play hockey? You're ridiculous. So here's another example of complete persuasive brainwashing propaganda by Global News.
The Westwood Arena in North Etobicoke is home base for the All-Star Hockey School, whose president is former NHL.
The audio is a bit low on that. Okay, let's keep going.
Player Jason Ricci. Been in business for almost 20 years. But now the arena is asking why about 15 of the school's teenage hockey players were allegedly allowed to attend training sessions here in the last month using vaccination certificates issued by this controversial British Columbia doctor.
Controversial.
Rules that are being created for people to follow in British Columbia are actually causing a great deal of harm.
An anonymous tip led police to the arena after it was alleged that Dr. Stephen Malthouse's signature was seen on the forms.
It just seemed really weird that as each hockey player came in, he noticed that it was from the same doctor.
Yeah, because that's a doctor who actually cares about what's going on and recognizes how awful this is and what you're doing. And John Cook, general manager of this Westwood Arena, you are at fault. You checking children's papers so they could go in and play hockey. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, I think we recognize that was odd.
Westwood Arena manager John Cook agreed to be interviewed, but not on camera. He says he was concerned for the safety of his staff, but says he felt the arena couldn't deny entry to the players attending the hockey school.
I cannot stop people from using the arena as long as they follow the government regulations, and that's what we did.
The exemption concerns were first documented last week.
Yeah, exemption concerns. You're concerned that you are not giving this to children. That's your concern. Your concern should be running for the hills if you do give this to children, because this is so what YouTube would have me say: safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. For children, let me show you this. Do you know who this man is? Have you ever seen this man? Answers for Sean. His kid was a hockey player. Just a child. If you go on Answers for Sean on X and watch everything this man has been through, and losing his child. And this all could have been avoided had the news, supported everyday citizens who were trying to stand up against this. This man's son is no longer with him. There is nothing more devastating. I don't even know how you get out of bed every day. He's getting out of bed because he has to fight, because that's what happened to his son. And for global news to portray the convoy the way they portrayed it, for what they're doing with the news in general, how they are bootlicking. They used to bootlick Trudeau so much, and now they're bootlicking Carney. They're completely Trump deranged. Every little clip, just watch every little clip with scrutiny.
Yeah, and on that note, thank you very much, Anita Krishna, for your real journalism now being fired because you are a real journalist. And thanks, Marvin, for sharing this. Again, I'm going to circle back to use a term from Biden's White House spokesperson, Jen. I forget her last name now, but anyways, going to circle back to that in the future because we need to continue to monitor what's going on in our mainstream media, monitor who's being fired for what, and just because they're doing real journalism. So we want to just switch gears a little bit to a video that Monique Dupuis shared on her Facebook that it came on my feed, and so I wanted to shed some light to that too, because people might say, "Oh, that's just a one-off thing. That doesn't happen all the time." Blah blah blah. So in our state-funded media, CBC, it just happened to Travis Dinraj. Is that how you pronounce his name? But he was a former CBC host. And so he secretly recorded his disciplinary meeting with the upper echelons of CBC, basically wanting to discipline him. And so he recorded it. And Northern Perspectives here is basically going to cover this particular story. And again, this is real journalism. This is real journalism, talking about real journalists who are getting fired because they're doing real journalism, right? Okay, we'll be back right after this.
The most explosive CBC leak in years just dropped, and it confirms everything Canadians suspected. CBC was caught on tape disciplining a journalist simply for speaking the truth and doing his job. That might explain the sudden flurry of critical coverage on Mark Carney that we discussed last night. Now, what you're about to see wasn't in our live stream last night, as the bombshell broke this morning, but it casts their so-called journalism in a whole new light. CBC isn't holding Mark Carney accountable. They're scrambling to save face. Let's take a look.
The new budget funding was publicly put out in the budget on Tuesday. It was widely reported on by not only the CBC, but other broadcasters. There's nothing in the tweet that is insider information.
A perception of a unionized employee criticizing their employer. It is an employee who has a personal stake in the matter, whose job is part of it. And that tweet could or could not be based on information that you know as an employee. So the issue is, does this post meet the standards of integrity? Does it meet the conflict of interest and the code of conduct?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the first part of this covert recording. Now, from what we understand, and this is just speculation based on this, is that Travis Dinraj dropped a tweet in April of 2024, and if you recall back then, Catherine Tate was getting a bunch of heat for how she was managing or mismanaging the CBC. And what his show that was on CBC, what they did is they reached out to their own president, Catherine Tate, as they should as responsible journalists, to try to get her to talk to them about this story. This is the tweet that he put up. So as you see, this is from Travis himself, and it was posted at 3:17 p.m. on April 19th, 2024. And at the time, you can see that it spread like wildfire. At a time when the public broadcaster is under increasing scrutiny and when transparency is needed, #Canada Tonight, which is his show, requested an interview with the president of the CBC, Catherine Tate. We wanted to discuss new budget funding, what it means for jobs, and the corporation's strategic priorities ahead. Our request was declined. This is unfortunate. And it is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it seems that Catherine Tate reserves the right, as the president of the CBC, to not be held accountable by the journalists that are allegedly paid to hold the government and government agencies accountable. Now, the person in the recording, and her name is Andra, she's talking about conflict of interest. You want to talk about conflict of interest? How about the conflict of interest of the fact that Travis is trying to actually do his job, but the CBC not only won't let him, but is actually punishing him for that in this disciplinary meeting. So kudos to Travis, because he's not having this. He's not having this, and he stands up and he pushes back hard.
Those are the questions.
And I firmly stand by the fact that it does.
Do you understand the concern with this post as it relates to the principle of integrity?
No, I really don't. I don't. And again, Andre, like, I find it problematic that we are in a meeting where we are discussing something that is in the interests of the corporation. So I'm not seeing the separation right now between the journalism and the interest of the corporation. I see how it would be in the interest of the corporation for this tweet not to be out, but I don't see how journalistically it's not sound. That's the kind of like disconnect that I'm having right now.
Silence. So he's calling this out and calling it what it is. You know, they're trying to say, well, you know, don't you think this is a conflict of interest, and, you know, it's a problem with interest and integrity and all of this. And Travis is coming back and saying, no, I don't understand what you're talking about here, because I find it problematic that I'm in a meeting, a disciplinary meeting, where we're talking about something I put out as a journalist, that it would be in the interest of the CBC to take down that tweet. Because here's the thing, this is the most important part about this whole recording and this story, is if Travis was talking about the CEO of any other organization, CTV, Global News, Globe and Mail, National Post, Postmedia, like any other organization that produces news, CBC wouldn't have a problem with it at all. But from a journalist perspective, it's his job to call that out. It's his job to say, we want an interview. And it's his job to say, they declined. So the problem is the CBC is trying to protect the CBC against journalism, against its own journalists. You want to talk about a conflict of interest? That is a conflict of interest. You want to talk about lack of integrity? Sure looks like lack of integrity to everybody that's listening to this recording.
I just want to get some clarity on something here. You know, because this tweet came out of a request for an interview that came from the team for the show. And so, you know, I didn't watch the show that night. So was there coverage of the budget, or was there going to be coverage of the budget? Or was that not part of the...
We had an editorial discussion, which was part of, and the entire team was part of, as to whether or not now was the correct time, since there was a significant development with the release of the federal budget and the new money, to put a request in for Catherine Tate. We had been discussing putting in a request in for some time, and we thought that there was a news hook to it because of the new development. So that's when the green light was given by and it was a team consensus that we would put this request in. And it was delegated that task.
So some other unidentified person, I believe it was a union representative.
Yeah, they go on to talk about it was the union guy in the meeting, why he was there, because union people have to represent the interests of the employee, right? So just kind of goes on for that. But then back to the discussion with the person from CBC representing the company. I believe it was Andre Lau, Senior Director, Digital Publishing and Streaming.
He answered that.
Audio is hard to hear.
We talked about the protocols, considerations when CBC journalists, well, maybe I haven't. What's your understanding of the protocol and considerations when CBC journalists are covering the CBC?
It's the JSP statement again.
Clear editorial separation.
Clear editorial separation. Yeah. So those who have the interest of the corporation should not be influencing reporters.
Yes. Yeah.
And if that is happening, that kind of goes against like some core fundamentals of the public broadcast.
So other aspects of the DSP, as I mentioned, which is that principle of integrity and the perception of who has a stake in the market, and real perceived impartiality, because as I mentioned, you are employed and you're criticizing your employer.
So the CBC management person, Andre, kind of doesn't know where to go from here, right? Because it sounds like it's her job to discipline him for going against the employer, for going against Catherine Tate. Catherine Tate probably wasn't too happy with that tweet that got over 400,000 views on Twitter. So she's trying to root this back into, so, you know, what's your view on, are you familiar with the procedures and the standards on how to cover the CBC? And Travis is like, yeah, we use the JSP, which is like the journalist standard practices, and that's their Bible. That's how they operate. So Andre sounds like she's trying to say, rather unsuccessfully, well, in that, you know, there's the principle of integrity and impartiality, and she's almost, it almost sounds like she's trying to say that Travis is being impartial, or sorry, that Travis is not being impartial, that he has an axe to grind, and he's doing that by coming after the CBC and Catherine Tate and releasing that tweet. That's what that kind of sounds like to me. That's just my interpretation of that. And Travis is like, listen, the CBC should not be interfering with the journalist practices of the reporters. And she's like, well, yes. But then tries to say, but we know that saying, even though she doesn't, everything before the word but doesn't count. So she then goes on to say, but you're criticizing your employer. And as they say, all is revealed. All is revealed. What this says, and this seems to be at the core of what Travis's case is for leaving the CBC, is that whenever it comes to criticizing the CBC, how it's managed, as a public broadcaster, as a crown corporation funded by the federal government, that you're not allowed to criticize your employee. Now, we then have to take that one step higher. Who employs that crown corporation? The federal government of Canada. And this is where we circle all the way back around to the CBC and their bias. At least at Northern Perspective, we've admitted our bias. People say that, we try and position ourselves.
Yeah, and so he goes on to say, just like I do, like you just come out and say you have a bias, which you do, which I believe every journalist does and every news organization does as well, and they should just come out and say that. You should have, regulations in journalism where if a journalist is giving a story, it has their name and it has who they voted for last. It just is what it is when you get into journalism. So that way people can see, okay, they're going to have that type of a slant in their reporting, and they can come out and just say it. This is what I believe politically and ideologically, and now I'm going to give you my take on this particular story, kind of thing. Because most podcasters, and I know there's a lot of conversation going on here about podcasters, whether they're legit or not and whatever, and I do believe some are more legit than others. Again, and some have more biases than others. I myself just want to get down to the truth. Honestly, that's just what it is. I hope I don't need to say, I promise that's what I want to do. It just is what it is. And so at the end of the day, people will see that or they won't. And you just got to keep asking questions just to try and find out what's really going on. But in our mainstream media, they're obligated. They have standards they have to adhere to find the truth and inform the public. They are obligated to inform the public and get down to the bottom of things, and especially with our state-run media. So here's an example here of what's going on there, and you can make up your own mind for yourself after listening to that conversation, and we'll just leave it at that. And that's all the time we got for the show today. Thanks everyone for watching, for commenting, for listening. Appreciate you. We'll be back same time, same place on the same platforms, God willing, tomorrow. Remember to stay aware, like, share, take care, and stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. So have a safe and wonderful and possibly productive Tuesday, everyone. Ciao for now.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.